Hello, everyone. Good morning, early afternoon. Thank you for being here. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Cool. I feel nervous going last, and I also have very big feelings around this talk, so I hope that folk can extend me grace. And we can talk about it. We're not going to probably agree about some of this, but yeah, so my name is Brittnay Proctor. I am a writer and researcher of Black music of the 20th century, as well as performance and sound and visual culture. And I mostly write about those things at the nexus of gender and sexuality. Yeah, that's me. The title of my presentation today is Searching for a Femme Erotic, Apollonia 6 and the Starr Company. I want to begin my presentation by thanking D'Angela for the invitation to participate this weekend and for her tremendous efforts in organizing Erotic City 40. Your labor does not go unnoticed. As Prince fans, I can say as a Prince fan, I feel so lucky to be in this space, and I deeply appreciate the work that you do to make this all possible. So thank you so much. I'm also excited to share this work alongside my co-panelists. And I look forward to the conversations that we all can have collectively that emerge from this presentation. So the presentation today is trying to locate a term that I'm thinking about, which is the femme erotic, and particularly in the context of Apollonia 6. And so this femme erotic resides somewhere between the erotic power exercised by the Starr Company, as we now know to be Prince, and Audre Lorde's popularized framing of the erotic in her seminal essay, Uses of the Erotic as Power. And so the remaining, I would say 12 to 15 minutes or so, is a search for this felt sense of this framework. So much of my early orientation towards eroticism had been chosen for me, commodified and packaged to me as sexual freedom, or more denigratingly, the privilege of being desired by a man. This limited yet extremely consequential framing, born out of what Adrienne Rich once termed compulsory heterosexuality, meaning America's enforced presumption of female heterosexuality, left me lost around what I should want and desire. Would a man desiring me be enough to make me feel whole? Or could it ever be a creative source for living a life of my own design, or of my own wants and desires? My first exposures to the idea of sensuality, of a confident beauty that surely was about conventional standards of beauty, came from Vanity 6 turned Apollonia 6. In Purple Rain, Apollonia 6, and especially Apollonia, mesmerized me. They were the source of men's contempt and insecurities. They held their own. Their femme eroticism, that is, their embodied femininity, along the axis of the sensual and the erotic, always resonated with me. The way I want to think about eroticism is in part through this category of the femme and its relationship to Apollonia 6. Therefore, for me, the femme erotic lends itself to the map of femininity, but it extends itself beyond the category of woman. For I myself have never always felt like a woman, or at least not a proper one. This framing most crucially calls into question the common sense logic surrounding the erotic, quote, within the context of male models of power in our society. And also here I'm reminded of the work of Kara Keeling, who's a Black feminist scholar that uses the category of the Black femme. So I want to give a little bit of context behind the concept of the erotic as I'm thinking about it, and then think more concretely about the work of Apollonia 6 and the very complicated feelings that I have. Although published some 2 years before Rich's essay, Adrienne Rich's essay, Compulsory Heterosexuality and Lesbian Existence, Audre Lorde's Uses of the Erotic as Power, addresses how compulsory heterosexuality constitutes how we think of the erotic in our society. For Lorde, the erotic is theoretical and practical. It is a tool that contends with the presumption, again, of female heterosexuality, and in turn delimits the erotic into heterosexist desires. And unfortunately, this presumption continues to dictate how we think about eroticism. Lorde writes, quote, "When I speak of the erotic, then I speak of it as an assertion of the life force of women, of that creative energy empowered, the knowledge and use of which we are now claiming in our language, our history, our dancing, our loving, our work, our lives." I turn to Lorde's theory of the erotic because of my own investments in the critical terrain that is Black feminism and Black queer theory. Her theory of the erotic is useful because it considers how heterosexist and by extension patriarchal considerations of the erotic got us fucked up around the erotic. The erotic bridges the spiritual and the political, and as such, it is, quote, the sensual, those physical, emotional, and psychic expressions of what is deepest and strongest and richest within each of us, being shared, the passions of love and its deepest meanings. In this way, Apollonia 6's work is the battleground where much of my understandings of eroticism stem from. The sonification and visualization of sensuality on Apollonia 6 and its visual accompaniment via the Happy Birthday, Mr. Christian video album is undeniably a vehicle for Starr Company's conceptions of the erotic. As many of us in this room know, Starr Company was a pseudonym for Prince used on production work as an engineer on his own records and for production and writing credits on other releases. In working with Apollonia 6, Sheila E., The Time, Vanity 6, and this pseudonym is used primarily during the years leading up to Purple Rain and the universe of Purple Rain. According to D'Angelo Duff, the, quote, eponymous release produced by Apollonia 6 and the Starr Company was a ruse. Vanity 6 turned Apollonia were proxy artists for Prince. For example, songs like 17 Days, Manic Monday, Glamorous Life, we talked about this earlier. Next Time, Oliver's House, they were all written for Apollonia 6, but gifted to other artists. And because of the seemingly total control Prince had over some of the sound and visuality of Apollonia, I do want to consider how he exercises an erotic power to produce Apollonia 6 during this time. Sonically and visually, the trio is hypersexualized, where Prince's conceptions of femme sensuality and femme sexuality revolve around the male gaze. As I noted earlier, Apollonia 6 mesmerized me in Purple Rain, but reflexively, their performance of Sex Shooter in the film is emblematic of this point. Yes, the hip-centric choreography and reveal of sexy lingerie out of black coats, as embodied by Apollonia, Susan, and Brenda, is built through a femme erotic, replete with the, quote, life force of women, but Prince's staging of this moment flattens the group's embodied femme eroticism, turning it into a simple play of tit for tat between the Kid and Morris and Jerome. What adds to this tension is the self-fashioning of the group as imagined by Prince. For instance, Apollonia wearing lingerie for the performance of Sex Shooter was quote-unquote sexy, but she wasn't accustomed to it. If given the latitude for input, how could a femme erotic emerge, and what more could be offered to those of us searching for our own wants and desires? Sonically, tracks like Blue Limousine from the album contain modulations that sound eerily similar to those in the Times oeuvre. The same goes for the rhythm section of A Million Miles, I Love You. Overall, I feel the album does little to honor the strengths of each member. Rather, it sounds like a compilation of demos that didn't make the cut for other Starr Company projects. For example, Brenda is both a songwriter and the strongest vocalist of Apollonia 6. Yet she is relegated to singing harmonies apart from tracks like Some Kind of Lover, which she co-wrote with Prince. Songs like Ooh She Wah Wah, should make us all recoil, insofar they remind us of Susan's sexualization via problematic tropes. Susan at one point coyly sings, "I'll make you happy if you give me candy." The Happy Birthday, Mr. Christian video album also only crystallizes this moment, where Susan's performance is met with a plethora of stuffed animals as well as love interests. Her subsequent move to performing in virginal white, to contrast Brenda and Apollonia washing dishes in all black, is only made possible by an erotic power channeled by Prince, who is the creative director of the unreleased video album. Unfortunately, to me, in these moments, the erotic power exercised by Prince is made most apparent in the relationship between sexualization and infantilization through the Vanity Six and Apollonia 6's reign. To add, a profile on Vanity 6 for the magazine Cream in August 1983 contained the following factoid: age, the age of consent. In moments like these, I want to take seriously the troubles of erotic power that are exercised sometimes from heterosexist patriarchal desires and framings. In the moments on the periphery of Prince's creation for Apollonia 6 is where the group's sensuality and sexuality are emergent and not necessarily mobilized by this kind of erotic power. Something more akin to Lorde's theory of the erotic, where the erotic, as our feelings and knowledge that stem from them, quote, touch our most profoundly creative source, and, quote, do that which is female and self-affirming in the face of a racist, patriarchal, and anti-erotic society. For all accounts and purposes, Apollonia 6 self-fashioned themselves in ways that were independent from Prince's often perfectionist tendencies. For example, in an episode of Apollonia Studio 6's podcast, Brenda and Susan note that there was a sense of glamour that Apollonia brought, and that the group was able to eventually wear more clothing. Also, Brenda and Susan chose Apollonia to replace Vanity based on audition tapes they viewed. Recently, I stumbled upon a photo taken of Apollonia 6 by Raul Vega, which is not typified by Prince's conception of a femme erotic. In this photo, there's nothing that is particularly coy or ultra glam or even necessarily feminine. Using a monochrome technique, Vega captures the strength of the group. There's nothing sweet, sexy, or cute about their self-fashioning. They don't have to hide behind the patriarchal gimmick of being a damsel in distress or even a hypersex goddess that is strong, yet willing to fall onto her knees at the whim of a male suitor. This moment in Apollonia 6's timeline might be a part of what I've been searching for. An instance of the femme erotic that accounts for the multiplicity of difference. Each woman gets to embody their own feminine power, not conscripted by an underlying presumption that eroticism can only be understood through men's desires of women. Those desires being conscripted by, again, patriarchal notions of women as inanimate objects of consumption. Here in this fleeting moment, I get to sit with this kind of eroticism. And yet, in the same moment, I can't get over the juxtaposition between grown boys tagged on the lower awning and Susan posing once again with that damn teddy bear. To end, we must be able to hold how precisely the patriarchy conditions our desires regardless of gender or sexuality. The crux of the issue is that those who embody femme eroticism are most susceptible to the repercussions of said conditioned desires. In these times, I'll continue to search for a femme eroticism that is the, quote, psychic expressions of what is the deepest and strongest and richest within each of us. Thank you. Right.